I should say that was wonderful, Professor Petri, and it's certainly not an exaggeration, for the reason that also being a student of dance for many years and teaching and researching on dance, I somehow feel I heard a very, very concrete and a formal discussion on movement sans all the technical jargons, Sanskrit technical jargons. Perhaps this is what would have been the same problem area the earlier documenters of any classical tradition would have undergone to understand is there a possible link between music and dance. For that matter, rather you capture the right word, music and movement. You never called it dance. That I liked so much, for that matter, because none of you, what the work says is not about dance per se, as there is a very vague, generalized understanding of the word movement vis-a-vis dance. Not many dancers would directly approve of any movement being a dance. So I'm very rather in debt for a work like this, because it actually questions the fundamentals once again. What does that mean to respond to music? And every response to music bodily is a movement or a dance, number one. And interestingly, the kind of categories you have taken to investigate, it boils down to some of, because I'm also afraid that I may land up lauding it infinitely, because many problem area what you took up is there. It's a perennial problem, and problem areas we keep working and addressing and readdressing. And perhaps that's the problem area which the era is facing in many ways. Argument's sake, when you took up the idea of the movement, like when it's in the low frequency, like there's a vertical movement, then there's a sway of the hand, and then the entire body sways. Like not many people, if there are dancers here, they would perfectly resonate with me that I'm controlling myself, but I want to demonstrate the way a classical movement is perceived, that we started with vertical movement only. The first low frequency, whatever we start a composition in a classical movement with the vertical sway. And slowly the hand moves and then the body moves. So this is pedagogically instructed to us. And perhaps the experiment proves us. While I'm very happy about, or rather very appreciative of the thing what you took on gender, because for the reason classical or whatever, the older traditions as would say that gender is not about the biological gender. No classical or a very age-old tradition would speak biological feature as a gender itself. And I'm happy that you never took it in terms of binary value and its spectrum was analyzed there. We are more speaking about the feminineness and the masculineness, rather than the man or whatever it means. That generally in many classical theater traditions of the world, the men are asked to take the female roles. And traditionally that's the case across the world, and we know women entering into public proscenium as an actor is very, very off late, and all of us know about the history of theater in that sense. In that sense, what would it essentially capture the feminineness in a masculine body has been a long debate, and we have been given a set of rules for us. What that captured my attention in the entire presentation, but perhaps certain people even laughed at it, is that the bend of the right knee. I would rather add on to that for us to capture a feminine movement is the bend of the right knee. Actually, this is more a feminine stance. This is like given to us as a pedagogical material, while the actor, a very senior actor, take their own call and they improvise on it and they do work on it. My question, in another sense, when it also the other two area, which we'll speak about emotion, and you're speaking about the kind of response to it, these movements are what we call the construct of a character in a theater. How do you construct a character is basically the way they walk, the way they emote, or these are all constructs based on movements, and that's how the character is characterized. Henceforth, a character is nothing but the collective memory of that particular person, what is lying among the common, mass, if you wish to call, and how it's the challenge of an actor vis-a-vis a dancer is to transform that memory or that imagination into a formal movement, not just as a movement, a formal movement which can be transferred and transformed. Something like this, where it has been experimented over bodies, and perhaps a data set perhaps is not for hundreds, but it has been for, I don't know how many thousands, to arrive upon one movement as such. In that way, I think we are reinventing a wheel in the current era, but the reinvention is so important, it throws such formalness in the discussion. And none of this is just impression, and none of this, and it is open for everyone's discussion, and henceforth as a community, I think it's high time that we rework on these issues and we arrive upon certain they're not just formulas or vector. I am in debt to a work like that which can say this is it. And in that sense, the 4 conditions what you took to discuss are very, very primeval and important to the current discussion, which shares between movement and dance, or music for that matter. A very important thing I would wish to ask is the traditional or the older culture was also a little bothered about how do I respond to a given music if I need more than 2 hands and more than 2 legs. Like, if there is a dancer who needs, for this particular music, I think 2 hands and 2 legs are not enough. And that is where the problem comes in one way, what the professor also addressed, that in a group of whatever we call as tribal or folk presentations, there are no this number of bodies and this number of legs. One thing is very sure, there are more than 2 bodies there, that's it. 2 plus 1 is equal to 2 plus 100 or 2 plus 1000. The 2 is very important. 1 is an important number in movement, and 1 body is just moving is extremely important. 2 kind of resolves it and throws a kind of a polarity there. And the movement is not with the bodies, but within the bodies. The movement is sculpted within the bodies. It's very, very important. But a third body there actually is 2 plus x. The 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 doesn't matter. So that is an important observation generally, which is thrown in discussions for many, many years. One of my urge for you in this work would be, how about considering more than 1 genre of music juxtaposing with more than 1 body? Like that would give a lot of cultural memory. Because whatever is laying deep within the memory and imagination of a man is thrown out when he is in a group. Probably there is a lot of things we analyze that. What is your take on a cultural identity on a work like this? Because perhaps this is one of a pivotal question one have to raise, because this word culture is also misunderstood. As if something is very territorial, as if something is very, I don't know, there can be many baggage to that word culture here. But I would rather ask your opinion on what is your opinion on that baggage, which the paper is not speaking at all. Is there anything like that?
So you're asking what my opinion is about the cultural
yeah, because it sounds something by divisions. Can we say the same paper? Can we look at that context? Is there a possibility for the paper to be extended to that level?
Yes, I think the thing you pointed out about group dancing and the interaction, that's a crucial thing, and we definitely should go towards that direction, because if we talk about culture, then we definitely should take human interaction into account, because it's very essential part of it. And well, as I said previously, we definitely should go more into that direction. It's just with this kind of approach, like the kind of quantitative approach, it poses certain challenges because
Yeah.
it makes the whole dynamics much more complicated, because even on a single dancer level the dynamics are very complicated because dance, this kind of dance is or music-induced movement. Actually, I could talk more about this terminology as well. But this kind of music-induced movement tends to be like it's not like stable. It changes all the time, and it's that makes it difficult to analyze. Also because the body has so many degrees of freedom, so there are so many possibilities for the body to move. So it makes it complex. Then you add to that the interaction between two dancing bodies. It kind of squares the complexity at least. But we definitely should go to that direction and try to solve these challenges, because I think that the human interaction and the cultural aspect is of course it's very important, because
Very
it's
important.
at the core of this kind of activities. But I would also like to add, like you started with the using the term dance and music-induced movement. Yeah, we kind of thought about it, like what would be a proper term for that, because sometimes dance can actually refer to some choreography that has been just like practiced before and so on, and it's a totally different kind of thing. Whereas here what we are interested in is more like a spontaneous reaction to movement that most often does not have any pre-practiced patterns or anything like that.
One thing, as we are discussing, something crops up in my mind is that, like, maybe not many people would agree that musicians generally, there is movement while they deliver their music, but music is more graphical, as most of us know that. It's like, it's more a graphical art, and if given an opportunity that a musician, if even doesn't have voice or even deaf, they can produce music, because music is essentially graphical, and in many of the conditions. Vis-a-vis dance is very ambience constructive. You know, you construct your ambience, you sculpt your ambience as you move. Dancers generally, you know, a very free dancer might feel, or many also feel that through their practice or performance, that at times music is an intrusion. At times, musicians also feel very intrusive when someone is dancing to their music, because not all kind of music is for dance, and not all kind of dancing is for music also, vis-a-vis. And we know that dance and music is a kind of a negotiation. We kind of, they are two independent entities. As we could say, music is more graphical, while dance is very, you sculpt the ambience around you to move. In that sense, we negotiate between these two parameters, and that particular negotiation, what many cultures have done, in Indic context, we call that as Sangeeta. Because that is Geetam, that is music, vocal music, Vadhya, instrumental, Tata Nrityam, that's movement, Trayam Sangeetam Uchyate. You put these three together to construct one particular entity called Sangeeta, or coming together of these things. But they are actually not natural response to each other. That's what many people have said. In that context, the movement vis-a-vis the music, should we say it is, are you speaking about a natural response? Are you speaking about a very, very definitive approach to the pedagogical movement? What does movement here exactly mean? Can I understand that a little more deeper? The word movement used here, in which context does it refer to? Because is it a response, a natural, just an instinctive response to a human body, are we speaking? Or are we speaking about, there is an allowance of a planning also?
Okay, yes. Well, I think it probably could be a combination of both, but as we could see with the small kids in the very beginning, it seems to be like an instinctive response to music, so there's some kind of a bodily resonance.
Yeah.
So the auditory stimulation actually makes our body resonate and move to it. But then I guess there can be a planned component as well. Like, for instance, if we think of those 60 dancers that were dancing there, some of them seem to perform movement patterns that maybe they had planned in advance, or they had maybe learned them in a dance school or something like that. So, but whereas for some others of them, it seemed more like just a resonance to the music.
True.
So probably there's individual variation in that respect as well, depending on the person's particular background and maybe dance training, dance as a hobby, and so on.
Yeah, and much of the work when I saw it is many of the snippets was more rhythm oriented. And when we say music, rhythm is one aspect. Why not the melodic was considered as much? I'm saying by and large, when we see the response or the music played, is more rhythm based. And is there a specific reason for it?
Well, the particular reason that we use this kind of very rhythmic music was we just wanted to have music that we are sure that it induces some movement.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it would be interesting to also investigate music where maybe the beat is not quite as explicit, and then maybe, you know, then it might evoke different kind of reactions in the listeners. Like, for instance, music where maybe melody plays a more important role, then it would be interesting to see what are the responses, like whether the listeners somehow maybe imitate the melodic content of the music with bodily gestures or something like that. You probably would expect less regular movement patterns in that case, but more gestural. So that would be an interesting thing to study as well.
Yeah, having said that, like that's one thing very advantageous to the work. What we see is like there's a spectrum of bodies being put into test. One is a child, vis-a-vis one we can see some trained body moving there. Some of them are really dancers there because we can see the dancer there, and there's totally untrained who just want to dance. There are so many bodies are moving there, and it's very interesting that the data was you were judicious enough to capture many moving bodies as such. And one important observation I made in the earlier experiment, what you made with all of us, when you were capturing small snippets of music and the movement was there, that I was in the break, when I was discussing with Dr. Vinu Haluri, is that like, it forced some of us who are very familiar with music and trained in like formal trainings are like that much of the music was in dissonance. It was a chord of a dissonance, but for a very trained ear or a very sensitive ear, a note of dissonance is enough to spoil a day, as they would say. That it's very interesting that some of the music was pushing someone to be a little irritable. Because totally out of contact with each other, as you rightly answered it, it was just juxtaposition on each other. And the 12-second break, do you have a formal reasoning for that break of 12 seconds? Is there anything to do with that, or only paucity of time?
No, it's basically, yeah, that was just, you know, there's a limited amount of time for doing it, so it was just, we estimated that would be sufficient for making the ratings, but like we didn't have any psychological grounds for having exactly that that break there.
Because that opens up another interesting discussion. What would happen if someone is exposed only to limited amount of music and asked to respond to it? Who's exposed to 1 hour of listening or 2 hours of aram, quiet listening? And if you ask them to listen to 10 seconds and respond to it, in fact, that was happening to most of us in one sense. Like even Atlas, it was a very interesting experiment, even to a very maybe exposed or a listening ear altogether. And the results came was at particular point that I had to complete it more than participate with it. And initially, somehow my response initially I was participating. Very much though, I was empathizing with the work, but as and when it was pushing me, finally I kind of had to give up and say I had to be perhaps only cognitive about the work and perhaps not participative with the work. because I'm being honest about it, that it pushed. And it was very interesting that it also can test someone's, the 16th or 15th or 16th, I was totally off. That also, it was very self-introspective. What can it do to certain listeners and viewers? And a question to Dr. Vinu Alluri would be like, when you were speaking about when one can see the arrangement of the papers and the way you have conceived it, where does the objective of this particular symposium, in one sense, would give you think, what is that objective? Like, is it a very specific objective is there, or is it that we are addressing certain academic issues? Because I have another subsequent question to it, I wish to.
So now, so you started about the perceptual rating thing. So these are, I thought these are two questions.
Yeah, there are two different questions.
Okay, so about how it was laid out. So, well, it was just, I mean, the way it was laid out in the sense that I didn't.
I'm not saying about the construct.
Yeah.
I'm saying about the thread. Is there a seed behind that?
Okay. Like I'd mentioned before we started the experiment, right? That we just wanted to give the audience, an idea about what it entails to conduct a perceptual experiment. I mean, this is a very small part of it, right? Because there's so many variants, so many confounds, because so many questions were asked. But this is exactly to show them that yes, there would be so many things to take care of when we conduct an experiment. But at least it's only when you do it, that's when you understand what it entails. And then we would like to also show tomorrow with a minimal analysis what we might infer from this data itself, right? Of course, it's like I said, we are not going to go and publish this or something because it's just a small thing. But he's going to put it in light of the original study. So then we might understand a bit more of what we can gather from this. So that was just an idea, because I can't think of I did think of an immediate thing we can conduct to see this cross-cultural aspect, because I wanted to play some Bangda. Can someone play? Because can I request Suvi? Because she doesn't know what, no, you don't play Bangda because you don't know what it is. But since you don't know, we can see how she moves and see whether, I mean, she's sort of an extrovert, so she doesn't mind coming on. Would you mind? I mean, can we? Yeah, why not? Because...
yeah, actually.
So we can use this.
Let's try something.
Thanks, Subi, for being such a good sport. Then we can get him from the audience and we play some Finnish music. Satuma? Yeah, we should do that. Yeah, we will do a quick cross-culture. Yeah.